I love podcasting. Am I audible? Can you hear us through
You're
this
audible.
mic? The nice
You
mic?
just moved your chair. I'm not sure if that. I mean, we had everything set. Now you just moved your chair.
I got
I
a
think we're still good.
sunburst glare. We got to work on the lighting. This is the equipment we had available in the Podshop. Of course, we never wanted to do video. We always said we had faces for radio. But here we are.
It's YouTube. This is episode 2 of the Podshop, TMBA Podshop.
Yeah.
We are sitting in my shop. You are living in my backyard,
I
and
am.
we are in full quarantine.
Yeah,
And I think they're about to lock down all of Austin today.
Yeah, locked down. And then it's interesting. They're like, well, we're going to lock you down, but here are the list of essential things. Pet supply stores. I mean, all this hardware stores. You can basically live a full life, I think. And you can still ride your bike, go for runs. You can pretty much do most things. You can go to banks. So just like bars, restaurants.
Yeah,
like
bars, restaurants, non-essentials.
But
I think
look,
that's gonna roll out
everybody's
today.
worried about, the draconian measures our government could put into place eventually. And I think that those are real and interesting concerns. But let's talk about the draconian measures that we've put in place on each other.
Yeah.
I mean, we are like big brother to each other. I haven't spoken to another person in the flesh other than you for like 7 days.
You went to go ride your bike, and I said, when you came back, I said, do you have something to tell me? Like, where have you been?
I said, I'm not the first one getting voted off this island.
It is going to be
a nice
interesting to see
place,
who cracks. I don't think it's going to be me.
All right. Today we're talking about financial freedom in the time of Corona. And it's interesting to look at I know it's like a really difficult time for everybody, but we've got to find the, glass half full angle and how to succeed and prosper now. And it's interesting to see. It's a little bit of a petri dish, like what strategies are going to be timeless, what strategies are going to continue to work, which strategies do we got to recalibrate on, because the market has shifted.
Yep.
And the timeless stuff's going to be interesting, but also like there is a lot of opportunistic stuff that's going to come up too. And the first thing, before we get into the meat of today's segment, is a few DC members, Dynamite Circle members, mentioned in the forum today. They were really curious about the buy side, and it's been said that one of your buddies said, "Look, like this is like the buy side opportunity of our lifetime."
Mm-hmm.
And of course, not everybody's in a situation to be part of that buy side, but if you are, what sort of assets might you be looking for? One of the things we've been talking about is like the way these assets are going to hit the market. Like we've already seen like jewelry start to hit the market a little bit, but like at 3 weeks ago prices.
This morning I was on Craigslist and I saw like several cars that have been rolled out of the garage, like, not clean, still have like boxes on them. Like that to me is a sign in the Craigslist car market. It's like people are just like rolling their junk out like, well, I'm never going to get to this project and I sure could use that $5,000.
You're seeing like the third car go up. You're seeing like the recreational vehicles start to creep out there, but still like I haven't seen like fire sales yet. Like there's still that we talked about yesterday on the pod, like the whole in America where we worship the market. I mean, 300 years from now, some future civilization is going to write about us and they're going to say, they were kind of obsessed with Purell. They really had some cool sports. They were quite ingenious at certain things, a little bit strange with certain things. But I'll tell you what, they worshipped this market. It was the number one news story every day. And along with the weather gods, it was the market gods that these people cared about the most.
People chained their retirements and their careers to it. Like every dollar that they had extra, they put into these funds and left up to corporations to hopefully pay them dividends.
Almost more than ever in this time of crisis, it feels like our national identity as Americans is the Dow Jones Industrial and the S&P 500. Like that's all that seems to matter. I mean, aside from virus response, this is the number one story. And I think it's sad. I think it's sad. I really do. Like, I don't give a shit really. And I think this whole idea that like, but there is this collective idea that like it affects so many because everybody's bought in. Like as a nation, this is what we've bought into. We've all funded it. Occasionally we bail the administrators out and then we take the brunt of it. It's like, this is who we are. We are the people who've created this stuff. And yeah, great.
Well, we're going to talk about it today. specifically, I want to talk about how not to be overexposed to it. I was listening to Noah Kagan, our buddy. He was doing a live cast, and he kind of shared, what his split was.
What's like your
it's like
portfolio.
He said he's got 30% in the market, and I think that includes like Bitcoin and also like Dow Jones, S&P index funds, yada yada. But what he said specifically about that number was it's an amount of money that I don't care if I lose.
Correct.
Like if it disappears overnight, he's not going to be worried about it.
Make no mistake. It's a game. It's a game. It's not real. It's a game. It's a casino that you've walked into, and it's a casino that's had the best 10-year run historically of any casino ever. So of course people are going to be jacked up about it and disappointed when things change. But you don't have to like scroll the clock back very far to find a 20-year time period where jack shit happened, right?
Yes.
Absolutely flat. And by the way, like you don't have to scroll that much back farther to say like, well, it didn't even exist. Like there's going to be another casino someday, people. There's going to be another game. And so I agree with Noah, which is like his split only changed a little bit, his portfolio allocation. My portfolio allocation changed 0. Like I have a zombie portfolio since day one because I just had a zombie mindset like the whole time. Like I don't because here's the basic idea with this marginal retail game, right? It's marginal in the sense that it's not gonna like double every year, right? Because it's such a retail investment. There's not that much margin in it. So I'm not going to expose my whole sense of wealth or all my wealth and which directly relates to my freedom in order to get marginal gains, right? And that's the basic idea of like, first, prevent yourself from financial ruin. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Everything leads from that principle because so long as you're not financially ruined, you retain your personal freedom. So long as you retain your personal freedom, you retain your time, which is the world's most important asset. Aside from, of course, love, boss man.
Aside from love, and nobody likes to come home, whether they're a digital nomad living abroad or whether they're somewhere else. Nobody likes to come home when the market crashes, It's like the streetlights turning on. It's like, well, time to go home, I guess. Like I wasn't in control of that. So now I got to go home and figure out what's next. Nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to be in control of their life. And like you said, ultimately freedom.
Let's talk.
And if you leave it up to somebody else, you might not be in control of it.
Well, let's talk specifically about how we're approaching the buy side and how we're thinking about it. And by the way, like obviously not experts, so weigh in with your thoughts.
You want me to read this question from Jeff yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. So Jeff attended yesterday. Thanks, Jeff, for coming. He said, really interested on your thoughts on the best stores of I'm really interested on your thoughts on the best stores of value and other ways to load up on assets during times like these. What specifically are these assets? I know you talked about watches, but curious if there's anything else you think you should maybe pick up. I'm waiting for those who are overextended to start dumping real estate.
Yeah.
It's probably going to happen. I was thinking about peer lending, real estate mentioned, buying online business, motivated sellers, doubling down on current businesses, spending less on expensive labor. I'm thinking about the expensive labor one. How do you think an economic recession would affect PPC rates?
Yeah, it's all great questions.
Yeah. So how are we loading up?
One of the things is timing.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the big thing. Like, a lot of the best real estate and best businesses aren't going to be fire sailing on the market in the next 60 days, right? Because like really good businesses plan for this sort of thing and they're multi-year ventures. And it's not like, oh my God, we gotta dump this thing all of a sudden. And the same is true of real estate. And so, although I'm tempted, I'd log into Redfin a couple minutes every day just to see where property values are. My sense is really that's just put it on ice for a couple months and like see, once there's, so to speak, blood in the streets. I hope that's not actually.
We talked about this a little bit yesterday, which is basically, some of these asset classes, they take a long time to unload, and houses are one of those things. I mean, shortest you could do it in is like 7 to 14 days. And that would be at some ridiculous price where you get multiple offers, which is what was happening in Austin up until about 3 weeks ago. I'm not sure what the kind of current state is here, but some of these assets are easier to unload. Stocks are easier to unload, watches, things like that.
Well, I also think it makes sense to like take a look at your portfolio, whether you're balanced portfolio guy, whether you're a Ray Dalio person, whether you're a zombie person like myself, and take that percentage of what's going to be hard assets and deploy it at a moment when you feel comfortable with that intrinsic value. And whether that's a home that you truly see something in it that's beyond a spreadsheet, whether that's like a nice place to write, or it's got access to this wonderful waterway, or it's a beautiful area of that city or whatever. I think the intrinsic value matters a great deal.
I think you're totally right. So when you're talking about a home, and when I say home, I mean a place where you live like full time or most of the time.
Yeah.
This is an interesting time, I think, in the market to buy something like that, because it's one of these kind of hold indefinitely things. I mean, a lot of people, they move out of houses I think the number's like every 7 to 8 years, but I think a lot of that's like driven by schools and kids and things like that. And also upgrading. But I think if you're in a position to maybe buy a home now, it might be an interesting one, because you can probably get a good deal on it. And especially if it's one of these hold forever things. So I actually bought a piece of property, Dan, at the height, like 2 days before all this happened.
But you ain't worried about it.
I'm not worried about it, because it was a good value. And I think it's going to be a good value today, a year from now, 3 years from now.
There's margin in it.
There's margin in it.
We're looking for margin here. That's the thing. Like, I mean, the gut call says, like, if it's at half price and you intrinsically value it more than that price,
yeah,
you know, I don't know. That's not very scientific. But again, we're not dealing at such huge scales that it might matter all that much, right? Like, at the end of the day, you're just looking for a diversification into assets that you think are wonderful that might float back up with the market at different rates. You know?
Well, I certainly didn't put 75% of my net worth into this property.
Yeah.
If I did, I would be freaking out right now, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not developed yet, and I still got to put a bunch of money into it, and that would be an awful situation.
Right.
So, you know, again, it's like, how can we diversify smartly into assets that we understand? So going back to Jeff's question, if I can, going back to Jeff's question, he's specifically asking, like, what are some of these best stores of value? And I think my answer to that is, like, basically anything you understand really well. Like, for me, I really understand in the 5-mile radius of where I live, market values. Like, I understand what's going on here. I live in West Austin, Texas. There's a bunch of breweries coming in. There's a bunch of restaurants. It's getting to be like a shishi fufu area.
Yeah.
And I live in the middle of that. And so I understand the types of businesses and the types of people that want to move out here. I saw a piece of property, and I look every day. I saw a piece of property about a month ago, and it was in an area that I thought I could maybe get zoned for commercial use. It was kind of like on the border of residential and commercial.
Yeah.
And it had 0 deed restrictions. And basically out here, what that means is, like, when people establish land, they put restrictions on the land, and that's to keep the sanity of the area. So
Sure.
You can't have like 100 horses or whatever it is. So, but one of the really difficult things, and this is a cool problem if somebody's solved this or knows the solution for this, is like, how do you search properties, rural properties that have 0 deed restrictions? You can't, as far as I know. You have to contact a realtor, and you have to go through the process of looking up, you know, the historical records of the properties. It's a long process. And a lot of times you can't do that in a fast market like in Austin today without locking up that property, putting in an offer, and then figuring that out. Well, I figured out early on that this property didn't have any deed restrictions. And for me, that's interesting, because it went on the market as a residential property, but because it didn't have deed restrictions, I have the ability to turn it commercial. So overnight, basically, if I wanted to do that, it'd be worth about $100,000 more per acre. So I saw value there where probably a lot of people didn't see value, because they just saw an old trailer on a residential lot.
And it is an old trailer.
It is an old trailer on a residential lot. So getting back, though, to the question for Jeff is, I have a deep understanding of what's going on in this area. And I might be wrong, but I've been watching the market for 3 years, and I've been watching other people scoop up properties, and I've been watching other people develop it. So
what's the rule there?
Know what you're getting into.
Yeah. It's not really like, don't jump into the face mask game necessarily, right? Don't jump into the Purell game. Like, your game is likely to have an enormous amount of opportunity. It might just be a tangential thing. I think that's a principle. Also, you know, if you think about this, so on the one side is store of value stuff. And I think a lot of it is like things that you really value. Like, yeah, it wouldn't be bad to have like a couple beautiful watches sitting around, or a couple beautiful recreational vehicles, or a couple homes like along places that I love or whatever. And that means that like other people are going to see the value in this too, most likely. The other thing, though, is like the opportunity in buying. And in terms of upside potential, I like the mention of things like PPC ads. And I like the mention especially of talent, right? So there's a secret little thing that's going to happen here, which is like the world's going to get reordered in terms of what talented people can deliver at a certain price point. And we really benefited from that with our last business. You said something very revealing to me yesterday. I'm going to reveal it to the limited audience, which was, hey man, if this thing would have happened in 2012, we would have been ruined.
Well, I asked you specifically, I said, what year in our business, if this happened to us, would we be in trouble?
Yeah.
And I think it was probably around 2012 and 2013. And let's expand a little bit.
Not to say that we're not in trouble now, right? Everybody's in, I mean, we're all facing enormous challenges, but we're talking like ruin.
Well, we might have been ruined. I mean, it's hard to say, but here's the reason why, is because we were 100% loaded up.
Yeah.
We were 100% invested in that business. We had a bunch of inventory. We had a bunch of moving parts because we were going like this. I mean, we were literally growing 100% year over year. And if those industries that we were in then, if that was today, there would be a problem, for sure.
So now it's a tough time to be like on that bridge of like, crossing the chasm. It's a great time to be right at the beginning with the sparkle in your eye.
Yeah.
This is a great time to launch a project. So let's move on then to the core of the episode. Is there any chitty chats going on in there that
Producer Jane says, you guys have swapped outfits. What's that about? I'm worried about hygiene. I would be worried about hygiene.
Definitely you should be worried about hygiene.
Blake Thomas, thank you very much, Blake. He says, you guys don't age.
I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true. we don't have a good camera.
Nice guy, Blake.
All right, let's get on to the episode today. We have been thinking and talking a lot about the market because everybody's just fascinated by it. And one of the people in the blogosphere that seems to be most fascinated by it, and running a community of people that are also extremely fascinated about this, is Mr. Money Mustache.
Okay, so we're basing this whole thing around a tweet from Mr. Money Mustache.
2 tweets. Yep.
Okay, let's read them first.
All right, so let's see here. I want to read the second one that we have actually before I read the first one.
All right.
Someone asked Mr. Money Mustache, and this really isn't about Mr. Money Mustache. This is about what he stands for in his community. So I just want to be clear. This isn't like a personal attack. This is this is an attack on ideas.
We are just debating ideas.
Right. So someone asked him on March 12th, surely you bought stocks this morning. He says, coincidentally, I did. Only because I found a last scrap of cash that I hadn't invested yet. Wanted to get as many index funds on sale as I could.
Okay, so this is essentially at a very meta level. Mr. Money Mustache believes that you should work a high-paying job, live a frugal lifestyle, all the lifestyle stuff from Mr. Money Mustache and the financial independence, retire early. But by the way, I think this community, y'all listening to this, we are the OG financial independence folks. We have a clearer vision of how to actually retire early. We'll litigate that later. But in this case, what you're seeing is this idea that you should work a high-paying job, save as much of your excess money as possible, and then put it all into the U.S. stock market.
Yes.
Okay, that's the basic plan. And what you're seeing now is
like all of it, like you don't have any cash left.
Okay.
And yeah. I'm really gonna need some verification on accounts. I'm gonna need some account screenshots if this is true, because this is a huge claim. If you're basically saying like in times like this where having dry powder is essential, I have put all of my dry powder into this one asset. That's a huge claim that I think I'd like to see a screenshot of a bank account.
Well, and it reminds me of this idea of a paradigm shift, which we talked about yesterday. And all of a sudden you start to see an anomaly and people that believe in the paradigm, what is the paradigm? The paradigm is essentially this. Let me just grab this. I want to make sure our computer, hello, everybody. A paradigm is essentially, by the way, iTunes just popped up. It's like, I never had a virus on my Mac except for iTunes. This paradigm is essentially up and to the right. Mm-hmm. How could it possibly go? It's up and to the right forever. And by the way, this is the best time ever to believe in that religion because, yeah, sure, you've got some good data on your side or whatever.
Until a couple days ago,
which is why we're talking about it. And it's important because been talking about this for 10 years. And so it's kind of our time to step up and say, there's like a lot of better ways to think about this. And there's this anomalous information that comes through. Basically, like, this is the biggest crash of that. This is the biggest counterexample that we've seen in a lifetime to that religion. Now, how do religious people respond? You know, you can do one of two things. You can dig in and say, oh no, you know what's crazy is today I actually bought even more. Or, I mean, you can make an argument, I guess a rational argument for doing that. And the other option is to really to like look at things to expand the worldview. It's like when there used to be a time when most educated people in the world thought that the earth was the center of the universe. And this was like a pretty important idea because, of course, humans, right?
Yeah.
Of course, center of the universe. And
I haven't seen anything else. Why would there be anything else?
Yeah. And you know, like when the astronomers came along and found like data points that suggested, well, like maybe like the sun's the center of the solar system and maybe the earth is sort of like a afterthought, generally speaking. And like the guys were just like, well, how could that possibly be the case? It's like, well, everything seems to be working fine without that model. And there's going to be a point in time, whether you're a market believer or not, where everything works just fine without the S&P 500. There's going to be a time when it's done, when it's over. And there's going to be a time when it's taking a back seat. And so you don't want to be advocating like that's the all-in strategy. I guess like what I find distasteful at a very top level is that you're essentially saying like, look, this casino is open. It's so damn good. All the data says it's damn good. Rather than taking a further level of responsibility for the money that you've earned over the course of a decade, 2 or 3, what I want you to do is trust this casino.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good news for you because then you don't have to worry. Like, you don't actually have to know what the casino does. You don't have to waste any extra time because, of course, you're working all the time. And then the rest of the time you're composting and running a garden or whatever. It's a little bit of a joke on like the kind of frugal lifestyle. But like the most important thing is like what happens to the asset of your time dumped into a job. And second, what happens to the asset of your purchasing power, your cash, and dumped into the casino. And this is why I take issue with it even when times are good. It's not even a good strategy when times are good. And now we're seeing this dig in, like, let's just buy every stock possible and, you know, better off buying things that you actually can use and enjoy.
These people are at 2 stages. Let's talk about the 2 stages. They've either already retired and maybe they've seen their retirement go down by 35% at this point. Yeah. So, or they're on their way to retirement and they've seen, I mean, who knows how long this is going to stay up or down rather. Maybe it lasts for 3 or 4 years. Maybe it lasts for 3 months. I don't know. My prediction is years. I think it's going to take years to recover from this. And so if you still have a job, a high paying job, first of all, maybe you lost it. Maybe this week you lost your high paying job.
One of my biggest critiques of this, like, and again, we're saying, hey, use your time to become an entrepreneur, to become resourceful, not to
build
a
skill set,
to build a skill set
that's valuable to somebody outside of where you work.
This idea that it's somehow easy to sustain a high paying career for 15 years. Who's that idea coming from? It's not that easy. It's not that common. It's often high stress. It's often high burden. It often requires you to take a commuter to be in one place for a long time. It is not easy to earn a high salary for a decade or more.
We had a buddy. He just switched careers. He's almost 40 years old. He was an engineer and now he's switched to software development. I mean, he spent about 15 years in that career. And as an engineer, as a mechanical engineer, it started to dry up. It was real hard for him to find a job. And he was, you know, he was good at what he did, you know, but there was like less and less jobs. And so he figured like, you know what, I think I'm going to switch over to development. And the reason he was able to do that is because he wasn't completely overextended. He's able to make less money for a couple of years as he ramps up. And these are the kinds of things that happen in careers, right? Like nothing's guaranteed anymore. You're not going to be guaranteed to work at Boeing.
Except for the SM. It's always come back. It always will again. Well, someday it's just not going to come back. That's my game plan. Can I go through my 11-point plan of how to?
I'd like
and by the way, I don't have the chat up here. If there's anybody chatting,
I do have the chat.
Okay.
You feel free to ask questions. Yesterday we had some questions and we waited to the end. We're not going to wait to the end anymore. We're just going to address them as they come if they're relevant to what we're talking about.
Okay. Look, I think fundamentally this idea of the American dream and the 401k, by the way, a conversation we should have this week sometime is, are 401ks total and complete horseshit for small business entrepreneurs? A topic for a future day. Think about that. I contend that the standard American dream, the standard careerist dream worldwide, and the FIRE community doesn't understand the concept of risk, essentially, and fundamentally doesn't understand how risky it can be to invest all your time into either a high-paying job and this casino approach. So here's some thoughts on counteracting it in a TMBA style. Number one, you have to prevent financial ruin. And that's by proper diversification, including having powder. Look, here's a crazy thing, something I'm going to steal a point from you. All these financially free people that are following this FIRE movement have zero powder in the time in their lifetime that you'd most want powder. And now if they just had a basic diversification strategy, you'd have powder right now. It doesn't need to be your whole thing.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Or you could buy in low.
Right.
Because you didn't buy in high.
Number two, it's only okay to put all your eggs in one basket if that basket is a small business. That's a belief we have. Don't necessarily need to justify it right now.
Well, I think we just outlined some of the problems with that. In 2012 and 13, it would have been a problem for us. But keep in mind, we did own the asset and we would continue to own the asset. And you have all kinds of flexibility when you own the asset. You could sell it. You could hold on to it. You could cut your staff. You could cut your product lines. You could deal with your manufacturers in China. You could start making ventilators if you're a manufacturer.
Yeah.
I mean, interesting things happen during interesting times like this. So you have flexibility because you have a platform. When you don't own the platform and when you've just been contributing to the platform, you have very limited flexibility.
Got to give a shout out to the FIRE community on the lifestyle stuff. The lifestyle stuff's looking real good. The primary point of Mr. Money Mustache's first tweet was that, look, our lifestyle hasn't changed all that much. And we were joking about the same thing. We're at the pajama party downstairs for 10 years, rolling 12-sided die.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden the cool kids are knocking on the door like, hey man, we're all home too. And it's like, it's crazy to see the whole world literally like show up. But the FIRE community has taken it a step further with localism, with lack of travel, with, you know, investing in your local community. And certainly that's looking real good right now.
Yeah.
Like digital nomading. There's a lot of questions about digital nomading these last few weeks. Something we're going to talk about this week as well. Yeah, I just don't like the idea of the time investment. The time needs to be spent investing in entrepreneurship. And that gives you the ability to control your time and control your assets. And here's why, fundamentally, their message, the message of high paying job, be frugal, invest in the stock market works, is because it's legible.
Yep. And I think producer Jane just asked that question, why is it so appealing? And I think that's exactly right. Because it's legible.
It's legible. It's a consumable idea, right? You can purchase it. You can say, I'm a FIRE person and I know exactly what to do. And the problem with what the entrepreneurial world is offering, it's like a big little idea called legibility. It's illegible. Mm-hmm. A lot of people will relate to this anecdote I had. I was sitting with a friend and he was saying, man, I have $30,000 in my bank account. I have this job and this career. How should I invest the 30 grand so that I can one day become wealthy? And I said, well, invest in your time. You know, find ways to buy back your time so you can build a skill set so that you can do anything. Trade cars on Craigslist. Look for properties with limited deed rights. Invent a little cool product. Start a little pocket. Anything that is entrepreneurial, that is moneyed, that is focused on delivering value at scale so that you can get money in return for it. Problem is, unless you're switched on, woke to this whole community, that's just like, nah, I'm kind of cool with like my job right now. And I'm cool with like just buying an investment that everybody else has access to too. Well, if you're cool with that, then you're also cool with not owning your time and not opening up yourself to the possibility of becoming wealthy one day. And you're also not invited to the pajama party, which is a cool party. So I think there's certain people, and certainly those of us in the community, that idea of the secretive nature of it ought to be appealing. That 90% of people are going to hear me say invest in your time, and they're going to roll their eyes, and they're going to be tired by life. They're going to be tired by all the sunk costs they have in their career. They're going to be seduced by this idea that, oh, I have 30 grand. That's 2 down payments on rental properties, right? Like this kind of idea, this retail bullshit investing in America, like that's somehow a good idea to do that.
Right.
And it's even not a pain in the ass and some kind of big economic opportunity, when clearly $30,000 is like a whole year of your energy focused on your own assets.
Well, here's the challenge, right? Is $30,000 might be 2 down payments on 2 rental properties, but it also might be 6 if you go knock on doors and write letters to people and you buy the assets at 50% off.
Touche. So anyway, use your financial freedom to tinker, to buy wisely, and most importantly, to survive. That's end of rant. Hashtag end of rant. I'm done. Lather me up. Hose me down. We got any questions? Or are we going to be done with this thing?
We have some comments. If you guys want to pop in questions, that'd be cool. No Heart says, I completely agree, but a lot of people don't want to be entrepreneurs. A lot of people don't have to be entrepreneurs. A lot of people need jobs. And I think that's totally cool. If you don't want to be an entrepreneur, that's okay. But don't plan on owning your time, your freedom, and your...
Well,
I mean,
okay, that's a little bit extreme. Maybe. But I just want... Okay.
Maybe.
Like, be extreme. We're on a hot take podcast. Why not?
Yeah, I think that you're going to have less options. Now, that's not to say you can't live a good life. You can live a great life. It just depends on what you want. Dan and I woke up when we were 25 years old and we thought this isn't good enough. We were working for somebody we didn't want to work for. I didn't have the car that I wanted. I didn't have the flexibility I wanted. All these things, whatever your motivation is, right? Woke up and said, this isn't good enough, and I'm working a job, and this is all it's going to afford me ever. So I got to take control of this situation.
For me, it was I couldn't go to the dentist on Wednesday. It was it wasn't like that I couldn't have some cool vacation somewhere, because like that's for rich people. But the right to go to the dentist and not take a sick day is a fundamental human right, And the fact that it was so dumb that I felt pressured into that was like the absurdity of it made that lifestyle ultimately untenable to me. But here's the thing. When you go back to the retail investor, the person with a good job that has $30,000, and by the way, if you have a good job, you live in a neighborhood in proximity to that job and you got a family or whatever, it's kind of hard to save $30,000. Like that can take a really long time. It can be this enormous achievement. And this idea that, how you feel when you're at the casino in front of the roulette wheel, it's that feeling that I think gamblers get addicted to, but I can relate to it, where you're kind of like, fuck it, a little bit like, fuck it. Let's see, maybe the universe is going to like call my name today. And the kind of house plan, that distance, like the fuck it distance, is like, this isn't really on me. So like, I'm going to buy those 2 condos, and it's like, fuck it. Let's see if I'll get that rental money, Whereas like knocking door to door, talking to the person, it's intimidating at first because you really got to dig in. You really got to understand. And it's like, man, I don't want to have to understand another thing. So fuck it. There's a little bit of that. And if you're thinking fuck it, like that's the entrepreneurial Rubicon right there, where it's like, you know what? I'm willing to have a few hard conversations. And I promise you, those hard conversations get more fun as now all of a sudden they're not difficult. Now you're an insider. Now you're talking to your peers. Like it used to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to rock up to this property and ask this person about their deed. Like that's kind of awkward. And then 5 times into it, you rock up to the property and you like, they know the drill because every other expert's asking them too. And like, they want to share the information because they're proud of their investments or whatever.
Well, that's exactly what happened. Going back to this property that I bought, watching these warehouses and commercial development happening around my house, I called the guys that are doing the development and I said, hey, what's going on? And they were like more than happy to tell me the ways in which they were developing these properties. Because like you said, they're happy about it. Their ego's wrapped up in it. They're interested to talk about it, So I also want to talk about these retail investments that you just mentioned, investments, right? When all these properties were on the market in my area, there were some properties that I thought like, fuck it. Like it's going up. It's gone up since I've been out here. It's already doubled. Like I just got to pay. I just got to buy something, right? I just got to buy it. And I'm glad I didn't do that because I would have been completely overextended on some of these properties. and I wouldn't have had any powder for a time like this, but it's enticing because you're seeing the market go up. You're saying, why wouldn't I push in all my money into the stock market? Like, it's going up 10% every year. Like, I'm really missing out. I got to put it all in there.
It's almost like if you're thinking in terms of like a trend, like a heuristic would be like, that's a bad investment. And if you're thinking in terms of a singularity, that's tends to be a better investment. Like, I found this particular situation that I know this person from this way. And again, like, the trends are easier to talk about. They're easier to go fuck it about. They're easier to like share on the internet. They're easier to sell courses about. They're much more compelling material for podcasts. It's a lot harder to say knock on doors for like 3 months minimum.
Oh man, that sounds like a lot of work.
By the way, I want to give a shout out, speaking of a lot of work, to my boy Mark Cuban here, inspired our first episode of our daily podcast. One day, I hope he can come on the show and we can discuss why lifestyle business owners can still be ballers.
Dan Taylor asks, Dan Taylor owns an event business. Hey, Dan. What do you think about when will people be meeting in person again? This is a big deal for Dan's business and our business, in fact, because we hold monthly meetups through the DC, and we have events throughout the year.
Yeah.
And so for us, this is something that, I mean, we just had to cancel our Austin event in Austin, and we're thinking like, what's going to happen in Bangkok? Like, it's months away, but right now people aren't meeting up.
Let me give a level-headed suggestion. Let's take a middle round, because there's the Americana rebound suggestion. Whoever thinks that we're just going to pump a bunch of money into people's bank accounts and it's all back to normal in 3 or 4 weeks, not going to happen probably. Then of course there's the doomsday suggestion, where it means like I basically put a patio on the back.
We barricade the street down there and like take turns.
Yeah, the localism thing. I mean, a lot of people are saying typically in these scenarios it takes like a year to year and a half to develop a vaccine, maybe more. So let's say a year and a half, things are very tight. Then you say, well, what does tight look like? It probably looks like an advanced version of like 9/11 security theater. So it's going to be like the world's going to have thermometers everywhere. You're going to have clean bills of health everywhere. So, we're running an event in Bangkok in October. Our initial expectation this year was that like close to 400 people would come to that. Who knows now? I mean, it might be the case that DCBKK attendees, they have to have a medical certificate suggesting they don't have COVID. They have to walk through a thermometer station at every global airport. Who knows? But my sense is like there's going to be some global apparatus, whether it's got to be a global solution, whether it's a vaccine or whether it's some kind of paranoia, not paranoia, but just, you can't be coughing in our country kind of thing.
Well, Dan runs an event business. He depends on people coming to events. I think one of the things people are asking is like, well, can't we just all do this virtually? Like, can't we all just hop on Zoom and do this virtually?
No.
Yeah.
Not at all.
I think that's a Band-Aid. I think that some of the things
you can do a lot of great things virtually, but there's a lot of, there's a lot of
great things. As it relates to work from home or remote work, right? Which we're invested in. It's like, is that something that people are going to realize that they can do more of? Are they going to realize that maybe they don't need to go to all the conferences? Maybe they can do some of them virtually?
Like I said, realization, let's dig into that term. Like, people have long realized that they can do their work at home, but their bosses have said, come in anyway for a variety of decent and indecent reasons. So the real realization is going to come with the pocketbook. It's going to be like, I'm going to look at every single employee and every single office cost and every single lease. And my realization is going to come down to what actually drops profits to the bottom line. And in a time of froth, it's like, let's get a nice lease. Let's put everybody in the office and make sure they're doing shit. And so again, I don't think this realization is going to be all that philosophical, to be honest. I think everybody that I know, you go to normal people in America, I don't care whether they're like a welder, sales support agent, whether they mow lawns for a living, you say you work from home, everybody knows what that means. And everybody thinks that that's badass, And so it's really a question of companies trying to use it as a tactic increasingly to save money. And, maybe the realization will come on their side that they can still achieve a certain kind of profitability.
Scott Patterson asks, and we're not experts on any of this, but he says, thoughts on Trump's idea to ignore doctors for the sake of the economy. All right. We stay away from political conversations for the most part in this podcast, and we're definitely not doctors. I will say this. There have been rumors
on a podcast
that he wants to open up back the economy. And I think that is very important to his legacy. I think him watching the stock market drop and all these businesses close and not knowing exactly what to do about it is not good for his legacy. And his legacy seems to be very important to him, and it might be more important than everything else. So, would it surprise me if the country opened back up for business? Would it surprise me if there was some huge stimulus package? No, not at all. I think he will probably act in his best interest, and then it's up to everybody else to act in their best interest. It's very interesting to me to see in this country people who are acting what I'd say like presidential. And Governor Cuomo, I think that's how you said it was the last name. Yeah, he's acting very presidential. I've watched most of his addresses, and he's a person that is providing leadership.
Well, let me just make this distinction. Let's keep that on a rhetorical level. The thing that I've seen from Trump specifically is talking to the citizenry and assuring us of different things like potential cures, potential stock market stimuluses. And I think from a leadership perspective, and the difference what Cuomo has taken, this is like a rhetorical thing, is when you listen to a Trump talk, you're not really sure what you should do as a follower.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, everything's gonna be okay, so I should do like nothing? Or like, should I make a sacrifice? Should I, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that's more or less the goal of that kind of talk is like, hang tight. Like, I'm basically betting that this is going to blow over and that like, you're going to get your stimulus and we're kind of going to be back on track. Whereas a lot of other people have been basically saying like, and especially if you can think about Cuomo's situation, like I spoke with a friend who lives in New York yesterday. I mean, we're out here in the country. Like if I was in New York right now, I'd be very scared because you would depend on collective action to stay safe.
Yeah, which is the case of most Americans. I mean, most Americans, a lot of Americans are in densely populated cities right now.
And a lot of people in the world. We got to remember, you know, this is a global pod, but, you know, Cuomo is the governor of New York, and it's a scary idea when, you know, not everybody's on the same page and everybody is acting in their own particular self-interest as opposed to a plan that is designed to inspire people to ultimately have like the best outcome. Like that's what leadership is about. And I don't know. I don't really know what I should be doing as an American right now.
I think people are going to argue a lot about, you know, starting back up the economy, no matter what stage this virus is in, because it's not going to be a situation, I doubt, where people are 100% quote safe from the virus. So there is going to be a restart at some point. Their businesses will reopen, and a lot of people are going to feel uncomfortable about that, no matter what state we're in, unless we find some full cure for this thing, which I kind of doubt.
Yeah.
So I think that there's always going to be some uncertainty. Now, is it like one of these too soon jokes? Like somebody passes away and you make a joke and you're like, "Ooh, a little bit too soon." Is it one of these too soon things? I don't know. But it is interesting to see, like I said on the last episode, this country and a lot of people folding like a cheap deck of cards 2 weeks in.
Yeah.
Like that says something about the sustainability. That says something about the preparedness, about the reserves.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about trends. I think the more interesting thing is the particularities. Like build a zombie portfolio, build a zombie business. If you don't have one, start one today and you should be fine, you know, and you should be in a position to help others then, as opposed to like hoping for some kind of, I don't know, trend to go the right direction for things to work.
Noah Hart, good question here, Noah. Any thoughts on taking loans for entrepreneurs early in their businesses? I have a job board making $2 to $3K a month, started a little over a year ago. Still bullish on the business, but I would feel comfortable with extending my runway as I would improve product offering / new recruiting services. We talked about loans last episode, because it was one of the ideas that Mark Cuban introduced, basically, is that these small businesses should be getting loans so they can run their business as usual. Our argument to that was maybe it's not going to be as usual when this ends. So
no, I would not take a loan. And what I would do is, if you really, really believe in this opportunity, I would find a partner, a cash partner, and maybe even one that can, like, there are situations in business. If you're making 2 to 4K a month, like that's already a big win.
What kind of job board, Noah? We have a job board.
We have a job board that doesn't make 2 to 4K a month.
Yeah,
we can know partner. How you do that. Yeah, Noah's in the better. He should partner with us. We'd be so lucky, Noah. But my thought is, why not maybe partner with someone in an adjacent industry to bring that cash influx, give them a small piece of equity, and only pay out on that equity at a liquidation event, like a future, like it's not like you're paying dividends over the years, but like when you sell your job board, which are very easy assets to sell, relatively speaking, there's roll-ups happening all the time. That cash partner then gets that 5% bump. But personally, I think risking your own financial, I don't care what the percentage rate is on your freaking loan. That is not compelling to me. It's like saying, like, personal loan, typically a very bad thing. Percentage rates don't make it any better. It's like going to prison is a bad thing. Just because your prison cell has a nice carpet in it doesn't matter to me. So like the loan talk is the same as it was. Again, zombie portfolio, zombie business. I don't think things are any different now because interest rates are gone down. It's a cheap trick. And so I think if you need a cash infusion, why not have it come along with someone that can make your business worth more? Like there's this wonderful story on our podcast a few years back where like basically an Amazon tool company invested in another Amazon tool company. And the first company had such a large list that the moment they bought equity from the second company, that company, in other words, like it was
like 100 times overnight.
It was doubled. And it was a square deal right away. In other words, like company B gave away 50% equity and then doubled in value overnight. So you could do this with 5% or 10% or whatever. So if you really feel like, and I do think that you could make a case, Noah, that now's a time to like hit it hard with the job board.
It totally depends on what kind of jobs too. That's my question, which is like, well, if you're hiring, if your job board is focused on hiring Instacart employees, which are at an all-time premium right now, you might be poised to have the best job board in the whole world. Now, if it's hiring somebody that's job depends on being in an office, well, that's not really happening right now. So maybe it's a time to pivot. I mean, that's one of the things that comes up with the stock market is there's no pivoting once you're in the stock market, but there's pivoting if you own a small business.
Totally.
Ryan asks us, Ian, I know this pod isn't focused on Kickstarter, but my planned launch for my Kickstarter is April 21st. Would you postpone in this environment? Yeah, I think Ryan, there's a lot of postponing happening. I think it's, you got to decide if it's in bad taste or if it's just not going to make any money. Like, my kid's school is doing a Kickstarter through this thing, and it just ended actually, and they're building a new deck for the school. And it's one of those things that's like, it's not that much money, and everybody wants it for the school. And like, even though the school's not open now, it's like going to be an asset in the future. So everybody's like, okay, this is a cool thing to focus on while we're all sitting at home. But if you're introducing something on Kickstarter that might be dependent on the economy or people making money or something along those lines, you might want to postpone it. I don't know. I think this is a taste question, and probably more so.
Well, the taste thing funnels down to the results, which is like, it's tough to get jacked about supporting an upstart brand unless there's some kind of like relevant narrative. So in other words, it has to,
like a mask company, for example.
Yeah, you gotta address. Like I was reviewing an article today for one of our sites, and it was basically like these ideas about how to work from home, and like the article just like launches in like working from home. I was like, this is completely tone deaf. Like, look, not only is like most of the professionals that I know that are on mandatory work from home right now, like this is one of the biggest topics in the world, but like, by the way, look at how much people are suffering, and like these jobs are not just like a nice thing to have or whatever. Like this is a big freaking deal right now. So I think the calibration to the times is the biggest thing. And if you're making anything for the zombie apocalypse, let that Kickstarter rip.
Noah, appreciate the input. And that looks like most of our questions.
Cool.
So if somebody doesn't pop in another question here in the next 10 seconds,
that's
we're out
45 minutes. That was fun. Thanks for coming. We'll post this stuff on YouTube at the TMBA podcast.
We're going to do this again tomorrow?
Yeah, we're going to do it tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel, same pod station. If you're interested in what we do, check out Tropical MBA podcast every Thursday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're interested in a remote job, check out dynamitejobs.co.
Thanks, everybody, for coming.
That's it.